We will go ahead and call the Regional School Committee meeting to order. We have a roll.
Steve Owen.
Here.
Sherry Barron.
Here.
Brian Clark.
Here.
Eric Grayson.
Here.
Here.
Will Sinclair.
Here.
Steve
Here. We have a number of other important people here, so welcome. Anybody else recording the meeting outside of LakeCAM? All right, seeing none. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We're going to move a few things around here, but I will go ahead and item number 4, acceptance of minutes for February 5th. I'll entertain a motion to accept the minutes. I have a motion.
Second.
I have a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We have one abstention. All right. Moving on to item number 5, presentation to the school committee. We'll start with our high school students, Robert and Aiden. Welcome. I know a different venue for you, but you must remember the middle school.
Yes. So, congratulations to our boys and girls swim teams. The Massachusetts Interscholastic Athletic Association awarded the 2020 Winter Division South Boys and Girls Swim and Diving Sportsmanship Award for the most excellent student athletes. Congratulations to Jaden Estrada, who has had his 100th win and is also the state championship win. From the world of music, Grace Kudo and Alex Parent participated in the 2020 MMEA Southeast District Senior Music Festival held at Somerset Berkeley Regional High. Many students also from the world of music went to Bridgewater State University to be part of the high school honor band festival. 5 ARHS students were selected by audition to participate in the 2020 SEM SBA Senior Award Music Festival to be held at Stoughton High. March Music, the annual dinner auction sponsored by the Apponequet Music Boosters, is scheduled for Sunday, March 22nd. Watch for more details. Our Dude Be Nice Week celebration was awesome. Student Council hosted a fundraiser raffle to raise money for this year's cause, the Usher Syndrome. In addition to fundraising, we celebrated each class's color throughout the week and demonstrated school pride on the last day with Apponequet colors. We have had the
We've had the opportunity to engage in a student exchange program with Hokkaido, Japan. As a result, we were visited by the following dignitaries: Mr. Atsushi Kano, Director of Agency of Education, Mr. Kazuaki Ikeda, Director of International Development and Exchange Office, as well as Kiko Oral, Executive Director of the Massachusetts Office of Travel and Tourism. The results are in, and the first annual ARHS Physics Catapult Project had winners in 3 categories. Out of all grades in quarter 2, 44% were on the honor roll. Please save the date for the Spring Parent Guardian Night scheduled for Thursday, March 19th, 2020 for parent-teacher conferences. The ARHS players are busy preparing for upcoming spring musical Broadway nights from March 26th to the 28th at 7 p.m. And the second annual Author Expo will come to the ARHS Library on April 4th from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. to meet local authors from Massachusetts and Rhode Island and purchase their autographed books. The event is free and open to the public.
Thank you. Next, move on to the FLMS presentation. Mr. Higgins?
I apologize. This is going to shine right toward you, so you might want to slide a little bit so that you can.
Who says I don't want to steer away from the spotlight?
Oh, man, look at that. Actually, worked out. It's not even in your eyes. So welcome, school committee. Thank you for joining us here at Freetown-Lakeville Middle School. We have a little presentation to give you tonight covering 2 major topics. We're going to talk to you about student life, and then we're going to talk to you a little bit about the academics and where we are currently here at this school. As always, we start with our conversation about our core values: respect, responsibility, and resilience. These are the core values that we hold very dearly, and we use these to guide our decision-making throughout the school years. Freetown-Lakeville Middle School opened up in September of 2002, and if I did my math right, that means that this 8th grade class is our 18th class that will be finishing here at the school. With that being said, I have two 8th grade students here, representatives from our student government, who are going to give you a presentation and speak to you about some of the exciting things that have been taking place here with related to student life. So without further ado, I'd like to have these two gentlemen come down. I'm going to have them introduce themselves to you when they arrive.
Good evening, Freetown-Lakeville Regional District School Committee and Administration. Our names are Bilang Baptista and
Boston Paquette.
and we are here to speak to you as representatives of the Freetown-Lakeville Middle School student body. It has been an exciting and interesting school year. Through engaging activities both in and out of the classroom, our teachers are consistently helping us to learn and live our core values of respect, resilience, and responsibility.
It is our pleasure and our duty to provide you with a brief insight into the student life at our school. We have spent the last few weeks interviewing our peers so that we could give you the most accurate and authentic information. And without further ado, we'll start with
Art Club. For several weeks, it has been currently doing free drawing and other things. There have been multiple themes that it has done, and the previous one being clay.
the boys basketball team is a tryout team, and this year they were 8-6, and they had a 6-game winning streak. The girls basketball team came in third in their league, and just like the boys basketball team, there had to be a tryout.
For the Student Government Association, we are about to put on a Spirit Week for the beginning of March. We have done several fundraisers selling spider plants, doing car washes, and selling stencils.
The cube team is third in the country for fastest cubing, and eight students traveled down to Concord, Mass. For the New England Rubik's Cube tournament and placed first for the 2x2 and 3x3. And they're going to have a spring team this year.
Friends of the Falcons have done several things for fundraising. They have sold carnations and had donation boxes in homeroom. The money was given to help people with leukemia and lymphoma.
The Honor Society is comprised of students with straight A's and 1 and 2s in conduct and effort. A 1 is the highest that you can get.
The yearbook club takes pictures during the school year and creates a yearbook and sells them to the students to help create long-lasting memories.
The band and choir had just had their concert on December 10th, 2019, and their upcoming ones are on March 10th for All Music Night and June 9th for the Spring Concert Night.
For this year's spring musical, it is The Lion King. They have shows for every grade, 3 shows for 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, and then the show dates will be May 8th and 9th this year.
The cross-country team is open to all grades, and on home games, everyone can run in the race, and on away games, the top 10 get to represent our school.
In the newspaper club, the students create newspapers and send them to different homerooms for students and teachers to read about the events going on in school. They are free, and students don't have to pay to read these interesting stories.
Majorettes has been in our school for more than 40 years, and it starts from grade 3 to 12th grade.
For soccer, this year they came second in the league, which was very impressive considering the sheer amount of middle schools that were competing this year.
As you can see, Free Lake Middle School has many sports and activities the students can participate in, and these are some of the things that make our school community great.
Aiden and Robert, I think they're coming for your job soon.
That's right. So with that being said, gentlemen, thank you very much for your help, and thank you for giving this presentation. If you'd like to stay and participate in the rest of the meeting, you're welcome to. If you have something else you need to get to, of course, please make your way out now. Thank you.
Great job, guys.
Tough to follow that, but we have our curriculum leaders here, our 5 curriculum leaders, to speak to you about, again, the academics here at Freetown-Lakeville Middle School, very specifically some of the important elements that are going on this year. To begin with, we'll have our social studies curriculum leader, Mr. Beauchamp. If you would come up here, Jeff Beauchamp. Thank you.
Good evening. Welcome to the school. The state came out with new social studies standards 2 years ago. We spent last year writing curriculum and getting ready to implement it this year. The biggest change came, of course, in 8th grade, but let's start with 6th grade. Their curriculum is geography and world cultures. The standards actually mandate that they teach the culture and customs and laws of every country in the world. Since there are more countries than there are days in the school year, they handle that by taking representative countries from each area and going into more depth in those areas. They're also enjoying new textbooks that they got this year from Houghton, Mifflin, Harcourt, Mifflin, Houghton, one of those, they have allowed them to present right up-to-date information. They replaced some textbooks that still talked about the Soviet Union, and textbooks that were more than 20 years old. And I talked to both of those teachers in 6th grade, on a constant basis, and they're absolutely thrilled with the new books and the ancillary materials that have come with them. In 7th grade, Paul Kudo and myself teach ancient history and world religions. We start from the early man and we go up right to the fall of Rome and the rise of Islam. We do projects. It's difficult to get kids, in this grade level interested in ancient history. So the more hands-on things that we can do, the more engaged the students become. The big change in our curriculum with the new state standards was our 8th grade civics class. 8th grade used to be a World History 1 class. The civics class engages the students in everything from the history of our founding documents, the Declaration of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, right up through preparing the kids for elections. They just completed a project where the kids had to create their own political campaign with slogans and posters and all of that. So they will be ready for March 3rd with the primary and then the general election in November. They've created a number of projects with that as well, including taking sections of the Constitution and putting it in user-friendly language, rewriting it in their own words to make it a little more understandable. They too, with the new course, obviously have received new textbooks this year. We the People, I always forget the name of the group that published it, the Center for Civic Education, sorry, that matches up with the curriculum or matches up with the standards very, very closely. Again, everything from local elections to media literacy and things that the kids need to know to be informed citizens. And writing is something that we emphasize on all 3 grade levels. Essay writing, we use a rubric that we have created in conjunction with the ELA department. The kids don't like it because, what, another essay? But obviously, the more they write, the better they get. And that's obviously an important skill for them as they move on to the high school. Questions? Thank you very much. All right, then I'll turn it over to Aaron and the Unified Arts Department.
Okay, thank you, school committee. I'm Mr. Perron, one of the 3 wellness teachers here at the middle school and the Unified Arts curriculum leader. So on the board here, we have currently the 5 subjects that are taught under the Unified Arts. We have art education, we have Spanish, wellness, music, and math skills. So I talked to each of the 5 departments. I asked them to give me 2 or 3 highlights they would like to share with you, some specific dates of important events that they're doing with the students. So like they told me, if you're free on these dates, they'd love to have you. Some of the events that they have are really great events for the kids. So I'm just going to go through I'll start with the art education. So we have 2 art education teachers, Mrs. George and Mr. Alves. So the art department at Flem's is currently preparing for the annual art show on Tuesday, March 10th from 6 to 8 p.m. They'd like you to join them and enjoy viewing the awesome artwork by students in grades 4 through 8. So it's just not the 6th, 7th, and 8th artwork, it's 4 through 8. So like I said, if you can make that date, they'd really enjoy that. The art department right now is also getting ready to pick winners for this year's grade 8 art integration mural. This will be our 9th annual mural. So right now, this year's theme is ELA, is the focus, and the mural will be painted on the wall in the 8100 stairwell. So if you've had a chance to walk through the building, there are currently 8 murals that are painted from our students. Our students design the mural, and then they paint the murals in different locations through the school. So if you get a chance, there are 8 right now, and this is the 9th year they're doing this. Also, the art department is big into recycling any materials that you'd like to donate, anyone would like to donate. They collect bottles, bottle caps, puzzle pieces. They make a lot of fabulous projects with our students. So they really take anything in that you want to recycle and they can use with their students. So moving on to Spanish. So the big event for the Spanish department, they already had this in October. It's the Day of the Dead Dance. All the proceeds from the Day of the Dead Dance goes into purchasing materials. So the students can make their own sugar skulls in 8th grade. So they have the dance, they buy the materials, and the 8th grade students make their own sugar skulls in class. Okay. Also, they do a virtual field trip with the 6th graders. So the virtual field trip in Spanish focuses on the traditions of Spain. The students experience 5 traditions that range from one of the oldest in the world to one of the most outrageous in the world. And then the last one they wanted me to mention was the flamenco assembly for the 6th grade students that's coming up in April. What the flamenco assembly is, students learn about the origin of flamenco dancing and then watch the performance of Flamenco Boston. A group of flamenco dancers, singers, guitarists, and percussionists. After the performance, students are given the opportunity to learn some dance steps as well as hand claps and rhythms. So that's coming up in April. The 6th graders have a great time with that event. We'll have a date finalized soon once Ms. Hoffer and Ms. Lugo come up with that. Moving on to wellness. Mr. Higgins and I sat down and we came up with a model this year that I think is going very well. We currently added a 3rd wellness teacher, which has been very beneficial. This year, what we've done is all 3 teachers have taken 1 grade level. So currently, I'll teach all the 6th grade students the health aspect of wellness, and then the other 2 trimesters, they're in the gym. And then Mr. Granfield will be teaching the 7th grade curriculum for health, and Mrs. Briggs will be teaching the 8th grade curriculum for health. So each student will have 1 trimester of health and 2 trimesters of physical education in the gym. So the way we rotate the students is first trimester, my 6th grade students will be with me, the other 2 classes in the gym. And then 2nd trimester, I'll get Mr. Granfield's students in the health room. My students will go with him in the gym. And then 3rd trimester, I'll get Mrs. Briggs' students, and then Mr. Granfield's students will go back with him. So we rotate the students throughout the year, each trimester. And that's the same for 7th and 8th grade. Another big event coming up for the district wellness department is the scholarship basketball game. It's been a nice fundraiser the last 2 years. What we've done is we try to get the community involved in the event, and we reward a scholarship to a graduating senior from Apponequet High School that's been in the wellness field from kindergarten to 12th grade. They've been in our school district from kindergarten to 12th grade. In the last 2 years, we've given a nice scholarship. One of the criteria for the scholarship is that they have to be going into a wellness field in college. That's one of the criteria. So this is our 3rd year doing it. And that's on March 6th, so it's not next Saturday, March 6th, starting at 5 o'clock. Next department is our music, general music, choir, and band. On February 7th, one of the big events was the district-wide Free Lake Music Fest. A great event. Students from grades 3 through 12 in the music came to participate in an all-day music rehearsal and performance event for a lot of the parents that came to watch. So the students are here at the middle school, grades 3 through 12. They learn new songs, they rehearse, and then they perform for the parents. Another thing Boston and BB already mentioned is the school musical coming up. This year is The Lion King. They had a lot of students audition for the show. They ended up keeping 70 students, which is a lot of students to keep, but they ended up keeping 70. Like Boston and BB mentioned, there's gonna be 3 in-school performances, 1 for each grade level, and then there'll be 3 performances. There'll be 1 on May 8th, the Friday night, and 2 on May 9th at 2 o'clock and 7 o'clock on the Saturday. So they asked if you can make one of the shows. They put on a great performance. Every year it's a great performance. Moving on to math support with Miss Robert. Right now she's really focused moving forward with MCAS. She's using interactive activities and games to help students in all grade levels prepare for the upcoming MCAS testing. That's her main focus right now with all her grade level students. And the last thing I'd like to share, one thing we do as a whole Unified Arts Department, all 5 subjects, is every year we have an international film festival. What we do is every year we compile some short films, about 9 to 10 short films for each grade level. We show each grade a different set of films, and after the films are done, the students answer questions about the specific films. And all the films that we show focus on our core values of respect, responsibility, and resilience. Okay, and that's all I have. Going to Ms. Lever.
Good evening. My name is Melissa Lever, and I teach science on the 8100 team. I'm also the science curriculum leader. In 2016, the state of Massachusetts implemented an adapted version of the NGSS standards, and because of that, we thought it was an appropriate time to form a science committee to choose a new curriculum. We chose STEM scopes, and we implemented it at first just K through 5, and then the middle school got kind of jealous because we thought it was a great program, so we decided to roll it out in the middle school. We started last year in 6th grade, this year in 7th grade, and next year 8th grade will take over. This is because traditionally in the past, the middle school, 6th grade is focused on life science, 6th grade is earth science, 7th grade is life science, and 8th grade is physical science. So this would be a 3-year rollout plan. It is a great program. All of the teachers have already started to implement bits and pieces of it. It's very lab-based, very hands-on. It gets these kids to analyze data, which they really have a difficult time doing. But since the STEM Scopes program has been implemented, especially the 6th grade teachers have seen a tremendous increase in the lab skills that these kids have as they're coming up from the intermediate school. We're excited to have it as a program, and we're excited to be fully implemented within the next year. We're also hoping that integrated approach. Last year, we did have an increase in our MCAS scores for our 8th grade science MCAS. We're hoping to continue that trend now that we're taking a more integrated approach with our science curriculum. Thank you.
Hi, thank you for having us. I'm Katie Sheedy. I'm the English Language Arts Curriculum Leader. I also teach 8th grade on the 8100 team. Our grade levels, we do writing in every single grade level, short and longer assignments, including research. In each grade level, we also study a wide variety of literary genres with a little bit more focus in each grade level. In 6th grade, that's nonfiction and poetry. 6th grade also has a Young Authors Day every June, where we invite parents in to homerooms and the kids get to display all of their written work for the year. In 7th grade, our genre focus is mainly fiction. They read lots of short stories and study 2 novels. They also take a field trip every year to the Zeiterion Theater to see A Christmas Carol, Charles Dickens, after they read that. In 8th grade, our focus is memoir and drama. We read Night by Elie Wiesel, so we get to tie in the Holocaust, which the kids find extremely interesting. And then we end the year with a little bit of Shakespeare before they get to the high school. And we read A Midsummer Night's Dream, which is also a lot of fun. We are finishing, I should say, our 3-year partnership with TLA, which is the Teaching and Learning Alliance, and we've had our consultant and coach, Adina Schechter, with us now for 3 years. That's been an outstanding opportunity for the ELA teachers here to just be together a little bit more. We've had peer observation opportunities. We've learned so many more techniques about teaching reading, teaching writing. We've had a number of professional book studies through that, and it's just been a fabulous opportunity for us and a lot of growth in our department. Thank you. I'm going to hand it off to Bria Udarian.
Hello, welcome to the middle school. I'm Bria Udarian. I teach 8th grade math, and I'm the math curriculum leader. So in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, we teach very similar topics. We just get more in depth as we go. As for example, in expressions, we start with positive numbers in 6th grade and go through a variety of operations with that and how to use it in various ways with expressions, equations, etc. In 7th grade, we start to introduce negative numbers, whereas in 8th grade, we dig into all types of numbers, everything we can possibly do. But as you can see, it's just a progression of all similar topics. Also in 8th grade, we teach 2 sections of 9th grade Algebra 1. Just a couple things that I wanted to share from each grade. Each grade wanted to share one thing with you. So in 6th grade, we recently had the Math at the Mall field trip. They did it at the Kingston Mall this year because, as you know, the Taunton Mall is almost gone. They had their field trip there. They got amazing praise from both parents and the mall itself. We recently got some emails that were with very positive feedback on that. In that field trip, they go over so many different concepts in math. They talk about percents and decimals with operations with all of those. They get into geometry with perimeter, area, and volume, and then they get into mean, median, and mode. So they get to do a lot of things at the mall, and now they're actually tying it into something else they'll be doing moving forward. In 7th grade, they wanted to share that they are working toward transferring over some of their unit tests into an online testing format. They're using Google Forms to do that so that it can help prepare the students more for our computerized MCAS now. In 8th grade, they recently finished a project on they were talking about the Pythagorean theorem, and they did Pythagorean spirals. So just a couple that they wanted me to share with you from some of the kids that they made. These are some of the projects that they did, and these are just amazing projects that they all have done. So those are just a few of the things that each grade has done. One other thing that I want to talk to you guys about, we're so excited that we finally are looking into new textbooks. Our textbooks are from 2007. I know that social studies had even older books than we did, but since 2007, we have entirely different set of standards now, Common Core standards, who have not only started new standards, but they've already made many adjustments to their standards since then, I think as recently as 2017. So we are so excited to be looking into new materials, hoping to apply them next year. We currently have narrowed it down to 4 different companies, Carnegie Learning, LearnZillion, McGraw-Hill, and Houghton Mifflin, and we're looking into their materials and to figure out which one fits best with our current curriculum and aligns well with our units that we already have. So we're working on getting through that, and then we'll have to decide if we'll have the ability to roll out all grades at once next year, or if we'll have to do it year by year, depending on the budget that we have. Thank you.
Well, thank you again for taking the time to hear our presentation about our school. We're very proud of the work we do here. We're very proud of our students and the efforts that they put in on a daily basis. I ask and I extend this invitation to all the school committee members to come in during the school day. If you have a moment and you would like to come through and have a tour, please contact me. We can arrange it. I'm very flexible with being able to arrange it in my schedule. Come in, we'll take a tour of the building, get to sit in a few classes, set up some time to even meet with some of the students if you're interested in that. But at the very least, the opportunity to come in and see the building while it's doing its business is really important. So we extend that invitation to you and look forward to you taking us up on that opportunity. Thank you very much.
Does anybody on the committee have any questions for Mr. Higgins or the curriculum leaders or anything like that? Thank you very much. This was actually insightful as far as what does go on, and I actually have a kid here at the middle school, which is the challenge which we have given to the district, that I'll send it to you, is how do we get this message out to parents? It's one of the reasons why we had to come out to individual schools to learn about the great things that are happening. The 9th year of having that mural painted in the school, I don't know if that's widely known. So how do we get that message out beyond just the superintendent's corner or what have you? And I think there's a lot of great things happening in the schools beyond just report cards or everything else, but how do we get that message out? And I know it's not an easy task, but something that we should definitely do. The other thing that I'm going to be interested in from a middle school perspective, which Mr. Higgins, I know you're aware of, is in the next year we'll be talking about the curriculum and potential electives that may occur at the middle school level. So I'd be curious as far as how that comes along as we get into the end of this school year, but the coming year, knowing that we have such a packed schedule already. So, but I know that's part of the district strategic initiative, so that'll be an interesting piece there. Lastly, anything else for Mr. Higgins and team?
Just a comment, your time tonight is appreciated as we look at the budget and start that process, and we look at line items and school improvement plans, but it's nice to see and be in a school and bring this stuff to life. You hear from the students, you hear from the true collaboration behind the teachers in the building, and just be part of the school culture and the environment is great. So your time is certainly appreciated, and it helps us kind of set some perspective as we go into the budget process. So thank you.
If it's all right, I'd like to let the teachers go. Okay.
Okay.
Unless you want to stay on my budget.
Jen, thank you very much for coming. I'll go back up to item number 3 on there for public participation. Anybody here for public participation? Seeing none, we'll move on to 6A, old business class size transportation staffing.
Mr. Owen, I do not have formal presentations tonight. We've had them the last couple of meetings. We will have an update at the next meeting. Current staffing. Right now, we do have several postings, but they're temporary postings. We still continue to look for a long-term substitute media specialist at the Freetown Elementary School. Currently posted a temporary site supervisor position, and we're still in need of a van driver. Other than that, there are no staffing questions. Obviously, transportation continues to be an issue. We may have some discussion on class size as we look at the budget conversation, but we'll have more formal updates at future meetings. Thank you.
Any questions about the committee on that? All right, seeing none, moving on. Do we want to tackle a lot of the other quick items before we go into the budget piece? Mr. Medeiros, do you have any objection to that?
I have no objection to that unless you want to just do 20 or you want to cover that and then hold on 21, obviously, is what your point is.
I'll defer to Ms. Lopes on that. Do you want to just tackle it all at the same time?
Let's start with 20 and work our way through the rest if that's okay.
That's perfect.
It's just the order of the packet.
Yep.
In your packet, you have a printout of the full FY20 budget. That includes any budget modifications that have been made to date, all the actuals, and any encumbrances. I've also included the report that I include every meeting. We're on target for this year as we go through the winter. It's been pretty mild to date. I'll monitor utilities and substitute usage. But if anything changes, I'll bring it to the committee.
Questions on the FY20 budget?
So it'd be my recommendation that we just hold on the second portion of the 21, right, and go through the other topics.
Agreed. Mr. Gracia?
Ashley, are you anticipating any surplus at the end of this year to where we are right now?
Possibly. We're going to continue to monitor it. As you know, there are items that could change on a daily basis, and the fact that we are monitoring our boilers so closely, any maintenance repairs could dip into that. But I can give you better information at the next meeting.
Any other questions on FY20? Seeing none, we'll move down to 7A, school choice.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Owen. In your packet, you have what I've typically provided, which is a memo and a recommendation that, once again, the school district vote to remain a school choice district for the year. It's an annual vote. I've also indicated the parameters by which we would at least establish the start of the process for 2021 and identify seats there. So I would request that it be taken in two manners. One, a vote to remain a school choice district. Technically, the state has actually changed the law as it relates to that. They used to require a vote. The latest change is that if you don't take a vote, you are school choice, which I think is kind of somewhat of a unique position. It certainly tells you where the state stands. It doesn't have an impact for us, but it is going to be interesting to some of those districts who haven't taken action and find out that they're on the list for school choice and get some calls. We typically don't fall into that, but it's certainly it is my recommendation that we remain a school choice district with those parameters established. You probably could take one action, Mr. Owen. I certainly will. I'll speak to the numbers just so the community hears the slots available before a motion and a second is made, and then obviously I know once that happens, you can have some further discussion on the action. If I may, I'll just reference the seats. So what would I be recommending is to remain a school choice district for the 2021 school year, and I would recommend that 10 seats be slotted for Ponequid Regional High School, 5 in grade 9, 3 in 10th grade, 2 in 11th grade. At Freetown-Lakeville Middle School, I would also recommend 10 slots be made available, 5 in 6th grade, 3 in 7th grade, and 2 in 8th grade. At the intermediate school, I would identify 5 seats in 4th grade, and I have no recommendation for seats available based on class size issues at both of the 2 elementary schools in 5th grade. So it would be my recommendation that you could take that action with those parameters. All of the principals were very much involved in the process in identifying the number of slots available. Please note the very bottom, even with this vote and action taken tonight, which will then be sent to the state, there is still further review and an opportunity for adjustments to be made one way or another as it relates to future school choice students.
So just to get it going, I'll entertain a motion for the Freetown-Lakeville Regional School District to maintain a school choice district.
So moved.
I have a motion. I have a second. Any discussion on that piece? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstention? Passes unanimously.
Move to approve with the parameters just stated.
I have a motion for the number of seats with the schools. Do I have a second?
Second.
I do have a second. Any discussion? Just one question on the intermediate school. Why the numbers seem relatively the same, especially what's coming up from 3rd grade? Why 5 in 5th grade and not in 4th grade?
The current 4th grade is a much higher class, so it would impact class size.
Got it. Okay.
So where the 4th grade is a smaller class, and as a result, that's where we feel the slots would
Any
be
other
made
questions?
available.
Ms. Barron.
So I think what I see is the 4th grade class is about 19, an average of 19 right now, our 4th grade class.
The current 4th grade.
Current 4th grade is what? The class size are about 24 in a class.
Right.
Yes.
Current 5th grade is about 20 in a class. So the group moving out would be
I see.
big enough without taking on
I see.
the other group as well. It's actually flip-flopping, strangely enough, the way the numbers look.
Yeah, that's right, it is. Okay.
Any other questions? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Passes unanimously.
Thank you, Mr. Owen. Just for a note for the community, the application forms are already on the website. We already are receiving those, and we have actually already received several inquiries in relation to where the slots are going to be made available. Now the vote's been taken, we move that on to DESI, and we'll also provide this document on the website so people will know what grades are available. We still tend to, on occasion, get school choice requests at the other grades. We don't decline them. We put them on hold, but they understand that we don't currently have any slots open. Thank you.
Moving on, 7B, performance contracting audit.
I'm putting forth a vote to move forward with the investment grade energy audit with Train. That's the next step in the performance contracting. They will go through the 5 schools and do the audit, and that's when we will get our menu of the options of which we can move forward with performance contracting.
I'll entertain a motion to move forward with the investment grade energy audit and project development services to identify economically feasible energy and water conservation measures to improve thermal efficiency, conservation energy and water, and reduce wastewater with Train.
So moved.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. Any discussion?
I would just simply add, just if there are any questions regarding the cost, we are talking about approximately $40,000 for that audit.
Is there a timetable for when this audit would be complete?
We're going to be hopefully finalizing the contract by the end of this week, and then they'll be able to give me a definite date. So I'll have that for the
Is
next
that
time.
still in line with
Yes.
With any summer work potentially?
lines? Look at that. Okay, great. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstention? Passed unanimous. 7C, Regional Transportation Fund creation.
Before you, I have the background information about the Regional Transportation Fund. As we discussed in prior meetings, there will be an FY19 supplemental budget coming out. Hopefully in the next 15 days, we should be receiving our payment. In that, there's additional monies for regional transportation. The Department of Ed has not given us a number yet, but Mars has done a calculation, and they believe it'll be about an additional $57,000 for FY19 supplemental funds. If we establish this Regional Transportation Fund, we can put that money directly into the fund and use that in the FY21 budget. This money is available all the way through 6/30/2021.
So the action taken tonight is simply to establish the fund.
Yeah.
You can have
It's not to deposit. That would have to be a separate.
that would have to be a separate action taken by this board.
Correct. Okay. I will entertain a motion of the committee to establish the Regional Transportation Reimbursement Fund.
So moved. Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
What's the flexibility of that fund, Ashley?
It is all for regional transportation.
So if there is excess regional transportation money, it stays in that fund.
It's only good for 1 year. If there's anything left over in that year, it moves into E&D.
So if we were to let that close out after this year, it would go into E&D. So the sole purpose of creating this right now is solely to get the supplemental money into the assessment.
Yes. Without.
There's no other reason for it.
Well, we cannot use that funds in FY21 if we do not create this fund.
Right, but that's the only reason for it.
Well, other than changing your practice, which would be to use E&D money.
Right, technically this would close to E&D, which we've discussed in the past.
Correct.
In past years, this would close to E&D, and it wouldn't get certified until next year, and we wouldn't be able to use it to the following year's budget. And if we wanted to use any money, we'd have to use it from E&D in this year.
Existing.
Which we discussed is not a good practice based where we were with E&D.
Right.
So my question to this board is, technically this money would close out to E&D. Are we willing to want to use E&D in the assessment of this budget?
No.
Because that's where we'd be, and technically that's what we're doing.
Mr. Gresh, if I may, Mr. Owen, and that's why I clarified this vote taken tonight is simply the establishment of the fund. Mr. Gresh is absolutely correct, everything that he shared in relation to those numbers, but I would still recommend that we establish the fund so we can at least engage in that conversation. It doesn't mean you're actually placing that money in there, that supplemental money when it comes. It simply means that you have the ability to do so.
Yeah, so just to clarify, there would be a separate vote as far as funding that piece. And just to further clarify, the committee has the discretion as far as what amount of monies can be placed into that account versus, so for example, if the supplemental budget was 100K, we could earmark 50K to go into the revolving fund and the rest of the funds would go back into E&D. Is that correct?
Yes.
So it's only as it relates to the supplemental money, not future monies.
No, so as we go forward, this fund, we could deposit all of Chapter 71 money into this fund and then charge against it for our regional transportation.
Only for regional transportation.
It's solely for regional
Whereas
transportation.
if money went to E&D and got certified, we have greater flexibility in the use of those funds, correct?
Correct. However, it frees up the general funds. So let's say there is a deficit in something else, you're using what you had allocated for regional transportation in the general fund, you can now move those monies, those expenses to your revolving account and make a budget modification.
Yeah, it's still more restrictive.
I think it gives greater flexibility to the district. It's another avenue such as circuit breaker or school choice. It gives you 18 months to use those monies instead of just having them in year one and then them going right into E&D.
When's the last time regional transportation was fully funded?
Never.
So we realistically will never have an excess of regional transportation money based on past history.
We have, right, in the past 2 years because they were given more since we...
But it hasn't been 100% funded. It's just a supplement based on they cut the regional transportation money.
Well,
it's less than 100, or one, it's less than an equal, being equally funded is what I mean. It's never been fully funded. The supplement's only assisted in getting closer to that total, but never reached that total of fully being funded.
Right, so in the last 5 years, I would say they've been roughly around 70% reimbursement. What they've been doing is when it comes out with the governor's budget, it's been closer to the 60 to 65%, and by the time they vote it at the end of their joint session, it's closer to that 75 mark. So as you see, when I do the changes in the assessment sheet, you see that increase, and that increase goes into our excess and deficiency. If we were putting that in the regional transportation fund, then we would directly charge that fund, and we would free up monies in the general fund for other uses. If we do not have this other regional transportation funds, we cannot do that.
Right, but if we closed it like we normally did, we'd have to go to E&D, which this board has said it's probably not a good idea based on our E&D, where E&D is at this point. Last question. Regional transportation money, how much did we get last year and how much is the supplement worth? And where does that, how short are we going to be?
1 second. So we received 72.16% of regional transportation reimbursement FY20. That's $1.5 million. With the additional 57, it would be at 1.623. Our expenditure that was being reimbursed on is $2.1 million. That was an expenditure so we get reimbursed based on almost 2 years back of our regional transportation expense. So that's on that number.
Okay, I made my mind up.
And I think, Derek, you bring up a lot of great points about the funding aspect of it. This committee, even if we approve the fund of existing, this committee has the ability to vote how much goes in. So if we decided we want zero to go into that, it'd still follow the same practice, then so be it. But we can also have the flexibility that it's a split percentage in some way or fashion. So,
but you're talking about 1 year. I'm talking about a policy or a thing that's going to last into the future. We're going to have this revolving fund into the future. So that's going to go long after this board and this committee, and its use could change. I don't think the integrity of the finances of how we've been moving forward, I don't really see, if we're not going to use it, why even have it? But that's up for the greater committee. That's only my opinion.
Any other questions?
Ashley, why do you feel as though this is important? I hear Derek. I kind of understand Derek's side of it. Explain it to me one more time why it's important for you.
I think it gives us greater flexibility as a district. It doesn't tie our hands to moving it solely into E&D because we don't have access to those funds until they're certified. There could be years where we don't get our certification in October. It could last throughout the school year, and we wouldn't have access to those funds. That's a worst case scenario. Here, if we have the money set aside in the Regional Transportation Fund, we only have access to them for 18 months. It's not as though they sit there indefinitely just growing. It's a practice that we use with circuit breaker, for instance, is something that we also do that. And it's common, and it's just, again, it gives more flexibility.
Mr. Gracious.
But the circuit breaker is not a good example, because how we're using circuit breaker in this district is not a good budgeting tool, correct? We've used circuit breaker, and we're actually budgeting based on what we anticipate as you've talked about this. So I don't know if circuit breaker is a good example for that. I don't think it's a good comparison.
It would be, right, if we
used it the way we were supposed
to. Like we could with the regional transportation. They work the same.
Any other questions?
Yeah, one more. So I think we're headed to leaner times. I think we're headed to a couple of years that are going to be pretty difficult coming up. You see that this would be better for us to have this money in this account?
Yes.
And you see it's better to have more flexibility, Derek?
Well, let me ask you this question. When we've closed the E&D in the past, wasn't some of that money regional transportation money? Wasn't a great part of the E&D at one point regional transportation money? It was the town's argument at one point in time that they were funding regional transportation, we were getting more money, and we were closing it to E&D.
So, but if I may, again, I just want to reiterate, the recommendation tonight by the Director of Finance and myself is to create the fund. We can have a further discussion about whether you want to put money into that fund and what that looks like at a later date, which is kind of where this, and I get the conversation, why create the fund? Well, you're creating the fund to have some flexibility that we currently don't have and we may need.
We haven't had it up until this point.
It is recommended by the state to create the fund.
Not sure. I'm a very big believer in the state's recommendations, Ashley. They've led us down some paths that haven't been so healthy.
We have a motion in accept. Do we have a?
I have another question. If we're talking about a supplemental budget this time, but if we were to have an excess in that line item, not as part of a supplemental budget, just an excess, would that also have to be voted into this fund, or would that automatically, if it was an excess in the line item?
So those are two different cases. So that's expenditure. We're talking about revenue. So the revenue would be directed into this account, and then we would directly charge it. So essentially, it's another revenue source on the assessment sheet.
Essentially how we used E&D in the past. We used E&D as a revenue source in our assessment sheet, same way. So there's really any difference here, folks, other than timing. Right now, we need it in our budget. That's why we're asking for it, $57,000. That's really what it boils down to. It's a timing issue.
Sylvia?
I think that may have been just answered, but with this being created in 2014, this is the first time we're voting on the establishment of this one?
This has been brought up, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Medeiros, has been brought up in the past. I personally have been opposed in the past because it limits us that you can only do it for regional transportation items. And where our E&D was so low a couple of years ago, it's still low today, but it was, I personally think because we have the flexibility of how to fund that, and we have the flexibility to say, I don't want all of the 57,000 to go in here. I can split it in some way or fashion on an annual basis for it. So that's where our flexibility comes in as far as is it. And then obviously we're still limited as far as what those dollars can be used for, whereas E&D we have greater flexibility, but we don't have the timing cycle as we do with this particular account. Mr. Medeiros, correct me if I'm wrong in that.
That's great.
I will bring forth the vote on establishing the fund. Again, just to repeat, this is not about funding. This is just purely just establishing the fund. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Abstained? The motion passes. 7D, Freetown-Lakeville Town Meeting articles. In our recent discussions with the town, we have dates that are quickly coming upon us where we need to stipulate the articles and how many that we want to present so they can review.
So this project is built into the current superintendent's budget, but because of the time frame that you reference, there is a need to take action tonight in relation to at least getting the article to the towns within their timeline. As most of you know, obviously, at a later date, if the article is either going to be pulled or discussed, I mean, it still offers you that opportunity. But again, we need to move forward. I believe the Freetown deadline is tomorrow and Lakeville is next week. So it would require us to take action tonight based on our schedule to meet both of those timelines to at least have that opportunity. Keep in mind, Ashley has included the entire amount of the project. There is reimbursement there. But, you know, for purposes of the vote and action, similar to the last piece, I would certainly recommend, based on the Director of Finance's recommendation, that these articles be moved forward as separate articles to both Freetown and Lakeville for their annual town meeting for the network infrastructure upgrade for $200,000.
I'll entertain a motion to propose the two articles to both towns as presented.
So moved.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second. Any discussion? This is just for the motion. The numbers themselves will obviously be inputted at a later date, correct?
I've included them in your packet. They are subject to change. The RFP will be coming in on March 24th, and once we get the final numbers, I'll update the towns.
Okay. Any other questions? All in favor? All right. Any opposed? Abstention? Motion passes unanimous.
We probably should move back up, Stone, to the FY21.
Yes, please.
I was going to say all reports will be next meeting, but Mrs. Loeb's entire report appears to be most of the meeting, so I can't say that. But I will say that both Dr. Kablinski and Ms. Gerlin will have their reports at our next meeting on March 11th. And certainly, obviously, Liz is here to answer and respond to, questions that may come up in relation to budget, but a more formal.
If I'm hearing you correctly, item 8, we can move past.
Absolutely.
Got it.
And so really the only other item, unless you want to do the subcommittees, is the focus on the FY21
why don't we
budget.
go ahead and put the focus on the FY21 budget. Wake up the audience a little bit. Do that. So at our last meeting, it was discussed that a plan was to open up questions by the committee about the 5 individual schools. I will go ahead and open up any questions, and we'll start with, not to pick up on any, but A is the first letter of the alphabet. We'll start with AES and go from there. Anybody would like to start with any particular questions for Principal at AES? Mr. Gracia.
Yeah, Ms. Pinal. I don't know if we can hear you, or if do they need to come up to the microphone, or can we hear them? Yeah, okay. You're principal, so we can hear you, I'm sure.
I'll project.
Yeah, the paraprofessional, there's additional paraprofessional in your budget this year.
Correct.
Can you explain the need for that and what that paraprofessional is?
Yes, so currently I have 2 grade level paraprofessionals. I have 1 in grade 1, 1 in grade 3. I do not have a grade level paraprofessional in grade 2. So I did put that in the budget. Right now, currently in grade kindergarten, we have 6 sections, and I have 5 kindergarten paras that spread themselves across the 6 classrooms. When the kindergartners go to specialist for that 45 minutes, those paras, I have them assigned in grade 2 classrooms to do some instructional work or to assist for those 45 minutes. So I did put in for an additional paraprofessional in grade 2. So just to give you a little idea of what the paraprofessionals do. They do instructional work, they take small groups.
These are grade level paras. These are all grade level paras that
So
you're talking about.
instead of having the grade K paras go up to grade 2 for the 45 minutes, I would like a grade 2 level para. So to give you an idea of what the grade level paras do. So I'm just talking about the grade 1 level para and the grade 3 level para at this time. They do instructional groupings. They also do things like sensory breaks. We have many IEPs where elementary students need sensory breaks. Being, at that age level, they need a paraprofessional to go with them. A teacher being by herself with 24 kids, child needs a sensory break or needs a break walking around the building. The paraprofessional, the grade 1 and 3 paraprofessional, they are there to work with all the teachers in terms of any students that have IEPs for social emotional regulation, or for any students that need that in addition to the academic support that they also get. So grade 2 is my only grade level that does not have a grade level paraprofessional. So I would like that for next year.
Any other questions?
So students that have regulation situations and so forth, do they normally have a para with them in the classroom, in the kindergarten classroom?
So kindergarten's a little bit different, but they don't have it identified on their IEP, but we are fortunate enough that kindergarten does have a paraprofessional. So in elementary school, the kindergarten does have a paraprofessional, so if there are students that have sensory breaks, and that's just one example, they have a para present. Then they get to grade 1, they also have a grade level para present. Then they get to grade 2, there's no paraprofessional.
What happened to that paraprofessional, please? Because there was at one point.
I feel like over the years, there were kind of a principal discretion where we need the paraprofessionals, obviously always at the lower grade levels at kindergarten. I did think that was the most important, especially with class size, to have that paraprofessional in those classrooms. And then I was able to create a schedule where kindergarten's all, the whole entire kindergarten goes to specialists at one time. All those paraprofessionals are free. So I put them in grade 2 classrooms so that they were still provided 45-minute support a day, which is fabulous. But if I could have a para that knows those 100 and however many students in grade 2 like this and be able to work with those grade 2 teachers on a daily basis every day, that would definitely be my preference.
Understood.
In the absence of that para, do your paras, the grade level paras, stay where they are in 1 and 3, grades 1 and 3, or are you going to move them around?
No, they would stay. I originally, when it did happen where I put the K paras in grade 2, it was because that was my least needy of, a grade that may have needed support. I would have to really take a look. I don't really know where I would change them to, but if I did not get that para, I would still use those grade K paras, again, 5 of them. Again, all K goes to specialists at one time. All those K paras are not, assigned anywhere. They would go to that grade level for the 45, 50 minutes a day. So they would still have support, but they wouldn't have their grade level para like grade 1 and 3 do currently, if that makes sense.
Hey, I don't want to interrupt if there are questions, but I just want to, and I think everybody here knows the booklet's a pretty transparent booklet done. Please keep in mind that the one paraprofessional that Ms. Pinal's responding to is one of 2 other positions that didn't make it into my superintendent's budget to you at this point, right? She requested an additional classroom teacher and an additional para. And those did not and are not presented for discussion, but just for purposes for conversation. What will be required under the current budget that I've proposed is that the principal will have to use her discretion relative to the current 6 sections in kindergarten. They may be 6 sections in first grade, depending upon the need, because she's dealing with her current staff. Correct me, Bethany, if I'm wrong, but it's articulated there as not funded, but I just want to point that out. There were actually 3 staff requests. Only 1 was carried forward in my budget. Bethany, I don't know, is that?
Yes, correct.
Mr. Gracia.
I don't want to hog the time. I just got one more question.
Well, I'm going to hog it if you don't, so you go ahead.
Well, I have one more. Rick, I definitely get that. But knowing what we heard from the FinCom, I'm kind of looking at some of the increases and focusing on that. Bethany, Ms. Pinault, sorry, your enrollment is going down, correct, next year? 475 students to 465 projected right now. But we have one additional FTE. I understand there was a request for a teacher. I don't really want to.
So the additional FTE.
Is that the para?
The additional teacher is that what you're talking about? The additional teacher that I did request was for grade 2. So currently right now I have 6 sections of grade K and 1. Right now I have 5 sections of 2 and 3. So 6 K and 1. So those 6 first graders are going into 5 second graders. My first grade is my biggest class at 126 students. So those 6 sections are then going to decrease to 5 sections, which is another reason why I would love a full-time paraprofessional to also work in that grade 2 level. Because I will be going from 6 sections to 5 if the full-time teacher obviously isn't granted for grade 2.
I see those numbers. My question is, in FY20, the school has 46.88 FTEs.
Okay.
It's the paraprofessional, that's all I want to know.
Okay.
Small money, but someone has been supplying us with air.
Can you just speak a little louder? I can't hear you.
I'm sorry.
Sorry.
It's short money.
Sure.
But someone has been providing the area rugs for the classrooms that have had new tile.
Yes.
Where did that money come from previously, and why is it in our budget this time?
So because of the late hires, so last year in August, again, due to the enrollment and the additions of kindergarten, we added a 6th grade K teacher.
Yes.
Being a teacher yourself, in grade kindergarten, you need coat racks and books. There's supplies that you need that are very expensive. The PTO offered last year to supply that with scholastic dollars. They supplied the rug, the bookshelves, the coat hangers, whereas they told me they will not be doing that in the future. So any additional classes that I may need, or any tiles that come up in the future, I talked to Rick and Mr. Medeiros, obviously, and Mrs. Lopes, about making sure that we do put in our budget the funding for rugs and anything else that we need. The fire-rated rugs go between $600 and $900 each, so they're very expensive.
So the PTO has been buying them for the last few years?
They funded them the last 2 years, correct, they did, yes.
Okay.
How many of those are you looking for?
For next year?
Yeah.
So in terms of tile, I do believe I did kind of just list what rooms we have left that are not tiled. I know there's 5 of them. I do believe in projection we plan on doing between at least 2 of them. I think I put 2 rugs in the budget. I put 2 rugs in the budget.
Okay.
And because, again, they have to be fire rated, they're not just rugs that you can go out and purchase. They're very expensive.
Any other questions?
Just real quick, I could probably do the math, but when you're going from 6 sections in grade 1 to 5 in grade 2 next year, what's the impact on class sizes for
So
that?
class size right now in grade 1, it's 127 students, so with 6 classes, it's about 22 students. Next year, it will be 25, 26 students per class in grade 2 with 5 teachers.
Thanks.
My only question, and this has been something that we've had a discussion in years past about a grade level para being used on IEP type services.
Sure.
So I'm also a big proponent that the principal is responsible for all of the services and they should be able to use their resources.
Sure.
But I know it's been a big topic on this committee that the purpose of grade level paras are not necessarily for those that are on an IEP. That's a different type of para altogether. So I am a little concerned that that's what we're using them for, but...
Sure, I definitely agree with you that, IEP services, we have, special educators and stuff, but I do see grade level para as servicing all students. And there are, to be honest with you, there are so many kids these days with social emotional regulation that are not on IEPs that require sensory breaks. So what I mean honestly by that is we have several kids that, believe it or not, a 3-minute break out of the classroom and walk around the building does monumental things for them to get back in the classroom and get them back on track. And if a grade level para can go and take those 3 or 4 kids and take them in the gym and shoot hoops or whatever it is that they need to do to get those kids kind of, you know, get some energy out. It's not about just IEP kids. She literally, that's what I love about the grade level para too, is that they get to know 120 students every day, and they literally service all 120 students, and they work with all 5 or 6 teachers on a daily basis. They're like a team. And the bond that they form, and I'm sure Mr. Ward can also talk about grade level paras, but especially at the elementary level, you can't let a 5 or 6-year-old go for a walk by themselves because they need to get energy out. You need to have an adult with them. And the impact that it has truly on them to get back on task and get back in class and be able to sit and focus, it's huge. It's just huge these days. And the grade level paras in grade 1 and 3 have been so instrumental, even in terms of just taking small groups. That's another thing, again, that I want to highlight. Just really being instructional leaders and being able to help out with the small group instruction that, again, with grade 2 being the only grade that doesn't have it, I am really fighting for a grade 2 level para.
Any other questions for us? Yes.
In our books, it shows 6 sections of grade 2 projected for next year. Are you saying that that's not, it should be 5?
So there is, all right, so next year, so right now we have 6 sections of grade K. Mm-hmm. So I believe.
So what that's showing is, and ultimately will be the decision made by the principal, based on that projected enrollment, this is showing 5 sections. She indicated earlier if she maintains 6 and 6, then it would only be 5 sections. But it's showing here as 6 because she's reducing in this budget the number of K sections. That might not be possible based on
I mean, with the census already, we're up to 113 kindergarten students.
But that's where that's why it says 6 there.
My apologies.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
All right. Will, do you have any other questions? All right. Thank you. Sure. Moving on to FES. Particular questions for Mr. Ward?
Same question, different position. You add in a first grade teacher. Explain that to us. Explain the need, explain what classroom size would look like in the absence of that.
So currently right now, the model that we have 5 units in kindergarten right now, with the average class size being 20. So next year, they can project that 106 children have to roll up to first grade. And right now, I currently have 4 first grade teachers. If we remain that 4, and I don't get this requested grade 1 teacher, that 106 has got to be those children that have been in 5 classes now got to filter into 4, so that 21 average class size average is now going to jump up to about 26 in first grade. So that's simply the reason why I'm putting this request to have a 5th unit in to keep the class size obviously averaged down to meet the needs of all of these students.
Ms. Barron?
I meant to ask Mrs. Penal this also. How many lunch recess monitors do you have, Mr. Ward?
I have
4. And it's your plan to just have 4 next year? It's your plan to just have 4 next year?
That is my
Mrs. Penal?
Same with me.
4, thank you.
And they're not split 2 and 2, right? You have, how many do you have covering lunch versus covering recess?
2 and 2 for basketball.
Got it. Thank you. Any other questions? While they think about it, the book room, is this something to mirror what is currently at Assawamsett, or what is?
No, so we have a book room. It's a resource room for teachers. As you know, we use the BAST, the benchmark assessment system that you've heard us talk about, where we get the Just Right books into students' hands by level, right? So within that book room, where in the past Dr. Marlene Carrera has gotten us some grants to supplement that room, and we have level, actually, to be honest with you, AA for our children that are at that level, and then moves up to, obviously, the third grade level. You're talking, we push it into the T level, whatnot. So we're just adding to supplement to that piece. So I think we've been using that book room as a great resource, and we're just trying to continue to do that in our classroom or our teachers.
And we're adding to the operation because those grants are no longer available, or?
We pulled it back in so we don't rely on the grant funding as we go forward.
Any other questions, Mr. Warnick?
Grade 1 classroom supplies. Again, a small amount of money, but what kind of supplies are we looking for?
So obviously we've got outfit room. So
Okay, so it's furniture and so forth?
That's basically it. I know it's a small amount, but at least give us a little bit to get us.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions before moving on to grades? Thank you.
My principals are starting to get the general theme, I'm guessing, right now, as I see Dr. Sullivan and coming up, so.
I think I've already seen the answer. Any questions for Dr. Sullivan?
At least let him ask the question
I
first,
know,
Dr.
I
Sullivan.
know. I'm sweating thinking about, remember I told you I just, to add insult to injury, I have a hearing deficit now. So I'm saying, oh, Sherry, please shout. Shout that question right now.
We'll translate. Yes, Mr. Gray.
Tell me about the textbook increase that you have budgeted here.
The textbook increase would have been based on what we are going to need for social studies because of the curriculum changing. It did not change. We're not asking for much for any changes in fifth grade. We have a pretty good textbook that covers everything that we need. But the fourth grade doesn't have supplies, so it was just for fourth grade.
Mr. Medeiros, related to textbooks, Dr. Correa at the strategic planning actually outlined a very detailed life cycle, if you will, about textbooks and evaluation and when they didn't need to believe you. So I'd like for that update that I'm assuming all of these items that were being asked in the budget for this year falls within that life cycle. I know a little bit of research may be done by Pat, which he took that over, but that was pretty clear as far as so that we're maintaining a good textbook.
Based on some fiscal constraints here, it actually has slowed that process down. I'll be sure to provide that cycle, though. So it is consistent with what should be priority, but the extent to which we submitted, for example, literacy at the elementary schools, which are in need, we did not budget because that item, I'm just ballparking, would probably be maybe an $80,000 item. So it is consistent with those priorities, but it does not maintain the integrity of all the spending that we would have needed to make this year.
Got it. It's great.
Steve, you just brought up a good point, and I get concerned with textbooks because what we hear about textbooks is we need new textbooks because we need to align with the curriculum. We need to align. So, I'm curious to know how that life cycle is and what's the life cycle of all these changes the state has made in the alignment, because that's an expensive venture. And my concern is that we're going to keep following that. We're going to keep chasing, money's going to keep following that. That's a big concern of mine, and how we purchase textbooks. So we can have a great chart of that life cycle, but then the state goes and changes their standards, and now we need new textbooks. So I'm very concerned with this whole textbook process and the money that's going to flow through these budgets. We made a concerted effort to purchase textbooks. We just heard the social studies person from middle school say that, but we're going to keep having this problem as we go further. I see this being an issue, and I don't know how we're going to be able to keep up with it.
Derek, just if I can, I think I can provide a little clarity just for the social studies piece. The standards prior to the ones that the state just released were ratified in 2003. So it was about 15 years.
Okay. What about all the rest of the
I'm just giving you an example.
Yeah, the standards are not turning over that quickly.
They're not.
I see someone else have their hand raised.
Well, I'm concerned about, I'm with Derek. I mean, we've got $220,000 of textbooks throughout the district for this year, plus, and I don't have that. Ashley, you gave it to me yesterday, how much the licenses are for iReady and so forth. That's a big number too, 50.
Oh, in total? There are approximately 10,000, I know, for the reading portion. Let me pull it up. Hold on a second.
I thought I had that piece of paper, but I'm swimming in papers or drowning in them. I'm not sure which one at this point. Oh, never mind. Laura's got it. So we're looking at another $60,000 almost at the 2 elementary schools for books and licenses and so forth. So this budget right here has about $280,000 in textbooks and licenses, and I'm with you. It's scary. I don't know that there's anything we can do about it, but it's scary. It's a scary number, especially when the towns are asking us to cut.
Any other questions related to Grace? I do have one question. So last year, we put a media specialist into the budget for Grace. Could you spend just a few minutes talking about...
Librarian?
Yes, the librarian, sorry.
Reading specialist, you said. I thought you said reading specialist, I'm sorry. That's the hearing. Yeah, so she's doing tremendous work, and we're thrilled with her. When you come to the roadshow over to my school,
okay.
I'm going to be touting her and her work, but she's in the classrooms. All the teachers have been in, they're doing co-teaching models with her. Getting a little bit more of the technology underway. When I initially had asked for her, when Rick and Ashley and I sat down, we talked about what I really ideally wanted when I went over to the intermediate school was to add a special, so I would have more flexibility in my schedule and have a block of time that we could have some sort of an academic support. But then when I was able to bring her on, I really wanted to have a thriving library, at least for the first year, and I see it, that's what I would like to continue to do. And then eventually, maybe the year after next, have it as a special. But right now, it's flourishing any day, same offer as Jack had, anytime anyone ever wants to come in. It's beautiful to see that library, Mr. Medeiros is over all the time. That library is running full-fledged all the time.
They're going to get a little flavor of that March 11th.
That's where the meeting is. That's the show. She's doing beautifully. She's working well with the PTO as far as book fairs, things that she needs. They've been wonderful helping her out. We didn't have, budget for her before, but she's got a couple of reading challenges going, so I'm really excited about what she's brought to the school.
Any other questions for Grace? Thank you. Moving on to the middle school.
Mr. Higgins, you have the home field. Home field advantage. Mr. Oliveira is still here too. He's here. So, assistant principal in the back. I don't know if he's here.
Mr. Gracia.
I guess this is my show, huh? Mr. Higgins, your enrollment's going down by 59 students. Your budget's increasing. Explain, please.
So it's increasing primarily because of textbooks. We are asking for math textbooks, which is a $79,000 increase right there. Also, in the previous years, what I discovered as I came in is that the process of teachers and departments asking for the supplies they need, there wasn't a process for that. So there was, if you'll look at the budgets, for example, for English, a better example would be if you look at the example for world language, and there was $146, $74, $120, and now $1,125. Well, the increase is that at this point I actually had the world language department sit down with me and ask for the
Sylvia?
Just curious on the rationale for the request for the Assistant Principal Adjustment Council. It seems
Sure.
like
So the request is, as I'm looking through, we have a significant need for two things. Increased instructional leadership in the building. We have 50 to 60 teachers in the building. And what I have discovered in my time here is that there's a need for continued training with teachers, working with teachers, that leadership piece that comes with instructional leadership. We also are having, while our numbers are going down by around 50 students, we've also seen a large increase, and this is district-wide, large increase in the number of students who are in need of adjustment counseling. So we are not in need of a full second assistant principal, but would be useful and important for us to be able to provide that instructional leadership across the building because of the supervision evaluation process that we have here in this district. It's pretty significant. It's very effective when it's done to its full level. And then again, as I said, we have a single adjustment counselor in the building now, and his schedule is full. The numbers over full. The number of students we have, and we are seeing an increase in those students each year.
And how many guidance counselors currently?
We have 3 guidance counselors, 1 per grade.
And 1 adjustment.
And 1 adjustment.
Thanks.
Ms. Barrett?
Back to the textbooks. So I believe when the curriculum leader, and I've forgotten her name, I didn't write it down, said that they needed the textbooks, it was going to be that they would like to have them all next year, but it could be a rollout.
That is correct.
So
that's one of the possibilities.
That's a possibility, okay.
The current number reflects all 3 grades in implementation. And she alluded to the fact that obviously they would make adjustments based on.
Right, good.
Any other questions? I will, the adjustment counselor thing is interesting topic, especially I may be one of a handful in one hand that actually opened up the school report cards, but I do notice that the behavior and incident are high at the middle school versus comparison to the rest of the state. So it was a troubling number in the report card piece, but definitely going to be an ongoing discussion, especially where those numbers are from a behavior perspective.
Steve, just so everyone's clear, Mr. Owen's referencing the school report card, not as his parent, that he doesn't open his child's report card. I just want to...
They're probably one and the same.
It's his birthday. It is his birthday tonight. I don't want to make him look bad as a parent as well tonight. So
yeah, exactly.
So he was referencing the report card and the number of discipline infractions within the middle school.
I could be talking about my own kid and his number of time references, but it was the school report cards that were sent out.
Mr. Owen, if I may, Mr. Higgins, Mr. Oliver, correct me, with what I see as a real positive movement in relation to providing appropriate structure and guidance and balance, I think you're going to continue to see those numbers for another year. I think with a new administration coming in, I think you're going to continue to see until the message is clear across all the grade levels and clearly both these gentlemen and the staff have their student body for 2 or 3 years. So I just want to point that out. It wouldn't surprise me that report card number for infractions will probably remain a little bit higher, certainly based on what's reported to me. But I think that's a positive piece in that they're establishing some higher expectations relative to student behavior moving forward.
We could also, if you're interested, we have our discipline data on a time basis. And we just actually, today we had a faculty meeting and present that data to the staff. And I can share with you that what we do see is a decrease in those things that we've seen this year. We've seen a decrease in those behaviors that are most disrupting classroom environment, which is positive. So the efforts that Mr. Oliveira and myself are showing positive trends.
Any other questions for Mr. Higgins? Okay. Ms. Barron? Fantastic. We're going to go back to Dr. Sullivan. You had one quick question for
Sorry, Dr. Sullivan.
That's okay.
How many lunch recess monitors do you have?
How many do I have? I have 4.
4, thank you.
Moving on to the high school.
In addition to Dr. Starkey, so you don't know, one of her assistant principals is here, Drew Dravian, second row. So.
How you doing, Dr. Starkey? So I'm going to ask a different question. I see a lot of I know you're all queued up, right? Yeah. It's not fair to the rest of them that I don't change the question around. Your textbooks lines, I see a lot of decreases. What are those decreases in relation to?
That's because we've been buying textbooks on a rotation.
That's right.
I knew the answer to. Because we've been buying textbooks on a rotation over the past few years. We did a really great job, obviously with your support, of replacing really outdated textbooks and buying textbooks that do match the new standards, which I can understand the frustration of that, Mr. Gratian. I'm not sure how much control we have over it, but buying textbooks to align with new standards. So we've made major purchases already in English, math, you might remember last year, biology. So in doing so, we're at a point right now where we don't need new textbooks in the major content areas. For the time being, the rotation will begin again.
Sadly. We approved the program of studies, for which I saw an email go out this past week. You had a cost to it. It was minimal, $15,000. Did it require any new positions?
It requires the maintenance of the positions that we currently have in the building.
So let me reword that. Net new positions. Are there?
What was presented to you in the program of studies,
Yeah.
we did not require any additional positions.
Right. So your FTEs have stayed the same. So there aren't any new. There's the same FTE level here.
Special education is a separate category.
Right. That's different. That's different. We're only talking about the base school budget at this point. Okay.
We go back to textbooks. Last year, we purchased AP textbooks.
You did.
Was there anything that was supposed to be done this year? Were we able to purchase everything that we needed last year, or were there others that we
At
were
this time, we
going
have
to
a
stagger?
sufficient amount of AP textbooks so that we ordered class sets of AP textbooks to try to cover an appropriate amount for the kids that are taking the courses. We do have a number of students who prefer to purchase their own textbooks, and we're going to allow them to continue that trend because they want to keep them through college. They'd like to be able to write in them. We do have kids who sell textbooks to each other, but I believe at this time, we have a sufficient amount of advanced placement textbooks for the programming we're offering.
Thanks.
How many teachers are at the high school?
51 FTE teachers, non-special education, 10 special education.
Thank you.
You just said you had a sufficient amount.
Of AP textbooks.
You have a very large group of honor society students coming into that senior year, and you still have enough, because that's a large group. That's the group that was once in 8th grade. It's one of the largest groups that's been coming through the district, and you still believe there's enough in there.
I believe we do at this time.
Okay.
I mean, we're going through the course selection process right now. An additional 15 kids jump into AP English,
Yeah.
right? So at this time, I believe we have a sufficient amount of AP textbooks. I'm not looking for money for AP textbooks right now.
Notice how everything ends with right now.
Yeah.
A year from now, I might be coming to you to say, the students are interested in an AP government class. Just a little foreshadowing there. So when that happens, I'm going to be coming to you to say, and in addition to starting the class, we're likely looking for textbooks for it.
Right now.
Thanks for the forewarning. No surprises from Dr. Starkey.
We do have other areas where we don't, where we don't fund AP. For example, our students in AP Art buy all of their own supplies. So students taking AP Art, of course we offer, when we say we offer 16 AP classes, that is an example of a class where we don't have a textbook. We do order art supplies for the general art department, but students in AP Art are required to use different materials and have different items to present their portfolio and they'll opt to AP. We don't buy those supplies. So that is something that we don't currently fund. We didn't ask for it right now. I've spoken to the art teacher, I've spoken to the kids, they prefer to buy their own product. So that's an example.
A good one. So there's a large increase in I'll get there in 1 second. Textbooks, magazines for the library.
So that increase covers our, if granted, our joining the sales network, which is the interlibrary, which would open us up to interlibrary loan. So there's a fee to join sales, and then there's a fee associated with labeling each book that goes with the sales network.
So we don't have that now?
Excuse me?
We don't have sales now?
We do not. We do not have sales now. Students are welcome to go to the town libraries and open sales accounts, but we as a high school library, we don't have access to sales. So we don't have interlibrary loan for any of our staff, any of our students. So for the past few years, back when Dr. Correa was here, we started talking about becoming a member of sales and maybe even extending that down to the middle school. So that's a portion of that expenditure. There is an annual fee each year to re-up your membership in sales, but the large nut is this year to join the sales network. That's the big increase.
About how much is the sales network? $7,500. And that's the one time now, and then it's less as years go on, or is it $7,500 every year?
No, there's a maintenance fee each year. I don't believe it's $7,500 each year.
Any other questions for? Seeing none. Related to textbooks, I'll just bring up the point again. The strategic plan for the district over the next few years talks about new curriculum, new electives, both at the middle school as well as the high school. So that is going to have some budget ramifications over the next several years. It relates to textbooks or what have you. So something that we do need to keep in mind there. So, all right, thank you very much, Dr. Snow. We covered the 5 schools here, and any general questions that we want to, from a committee perspective, before we get into, I think, some directive type items for the administration. I'll reiterate to the board from the regional FinCom was a maintenance type budget was to be presented. And that was the message from the Lakeville side of the house here. So before we start getting into potential directives, what have you, any other questions, thoughts, comments from the rest of the board? From an overall directive perspective, I do believe we need to move into a direction where there is a budget that's presented with no net new positions, right? I know we've added a new position over the last couple of years, but where we're at from a budget perspective, I'd like to, the directive is no net new positions in that particular case. And I'll open that up to the committee for thoughts, questions.
I would have to agree. I think that's gonna fall in line with what we heard from Lakeville and the affordability. There's things, numbers aren't all finalized yet. There's still some numbers we're waiting on, but and I'm sure as is Lakeville and the towns, but certainly the direction from them was a maintenance budget, and that would mean no net new position. So what does net new position mean? That means if there's, that's why I kept asking about FTEs, is there's 50 FTEs this year, there's 50 FTEs next year. And how you get there is amongst your budget. You got to figure it out within your budget, but that's really what it means. On top of that, though, is the sustainability question, right? So with a net new position, my request would be, it has to be something that is not you're not replacing that position in in your budget with something that is a non-recurring item. For instance, textbooks. Because that position is going to be recurring year after year. The textbooks are not. And we're going to have a sustainability issue with the budget going forward. And so those two worlds just won't, they don't keep going down in infinity to keep adding positions and getting rid of an expense because this year we don't really need it. That position's going to go on for however long, you know, we have that position. So net new would be at no cost and no reoccurring cost to that.
I think it also holds true for the dollars behind it, right?
Yeah.
Just because we have one, I don't mean to belittle, we don't replace our lunchroom monitor and add a teacher, right? We have to have the number aspect to that.
From a dollar, yes.
Dollars per dollar, correct. Any other?
Well, in that same vein, though, this committee has said all the way along that we are striving for low class sizes at the elementary school, and we do have a request for a grade 1 teacher at FES. So we need to find that within the budget.
Well, I think that's
without adding.
Yeah, I think that's a.
So as I interpret what's been shared, and I've obviously had a conversation with Mr. Grush and Mr. Owen, who are members of the regional FinCom, those are still decisions that can be made by the leadership team. We just need to have it be at zero. We have 5 new positions. You're not suggesting that those positions should not be funded. You're simply saying that the net dollar amount and FTE needs to be zero if we're going to be in line, even close to being in line with what the towns have suggested. Which, you know, Mrs. Barron, to your point, that's going to be where we're rolling up our sleeves and taking a look at it. We're simply not going to, although we have 5 new positions listed, they may still exist. It may be that we have to look at, it won't be maybe, we will be looking at the 8 projected retirements, for example, and maybe through attrition, making some adjustments there.
How many retirements do we have this year?
We have 8 projected right now.
Are those all classroom retirees? They're not, so there's a difference there.
No. We have 2 district and 6 school level. Necessarily going, we haven't formally announced all those, so I don't want to go too much more into detail than that, but 6 would be
That would be the targeted number, though, because if you're going to be looking net new, it's going to be based on the 6, correct?
Yeah, I think we lose some flexibility based on what those positions are.
Exactly.
The other thing I'd like for this committee to look at is on the assessment sheet, school choice number, revenue number was outlined at 400K. I believe that is high, and we should take more of an approach where we take the number of students we currently have in the system, which I believe is 65, times the 5, and take any residual money that we have from last year. Correct me if I'm wrong, Ashley, we have $40,000 last year from school choice we need to use this year. If we do the quick math, 40 plus the 325, that gives us a 365 number. I know we have slots open, but there's no guarantee for us to make up those numbers, especially with the large number that we're losing this year. I believe we're losing 8 seats to graduation. So I don't believe going at an approach of 400K as a revenue offset on the assessment is the right approach. I know that's a little counterintuitive. We're talking about how do we reduce the bottom line from the expense perspective, but I also think we need to be smart about the revenue pieces there. The good news is we do exceed that number. It goes into the school choice revolving account and we use it next year. I think that's a smarter approach. So I would like to propose that that line item on the assessment sheet is reduced by 35K to 365 instead of the 400K that was originally presented.
I agree, for all the same reasons you just mentioned. Anybody?
Anybody have any objection to that? The last piece of anybody in the committee?
I know you're speaking. I'm just going to voice, obviously, my reservations. The budget has built in a projected 80 students. I don't disagree with all the numbers that you just shared, that it's absolutely accurate, 65. We felt it was a conservative number. It's 15 less than the 25 slots that we've opened up. And so for all those reasons, we feel that that revenue offset will help us to maintain our operational budget. I know it's to be continued for the next meeting, but I just need to note that we're not maximizing the slots available. It's actually 10 less, which is a little bit more conservative than we did last year, certainly. but all the numbers you shared are absolutely accurate. 65, 8 students leaving. I do think that we reclassify some students, though, so that's the other piece to our conservative nature, where students who are current students move out of the district and become school choice. So I'm cautiously optimistic that we can reach that 80, and that's why it was there. But certainly, we can have the discussion relative to the reduction. Thanks.
The last piece, just to confirm, I know we're going to be talking about technology at the next meeting, but where we move 200K to the warrant article, the mindset is we'll be reducing the technology by 200K in the operating budget.
No, because we need to clarify, you're reducing the budget by $80,000, and I'll have Ashley just speak to that.
It's only $80,000 due to that was the amount of the reimbursement, the expenditure we would be paying for the technology upgrade. It was only $80,000, so that was what was in the operational budget, not the $200,000.
So when we move that to the article, we're only removing $80,000 out of the operational.
Mr. Gratian.
No, you were going to say.
I have an objection to that. This committee has been asking for a plan. I know I have seen something recent, but we still haven't seen a plan. I believe technology should be flatlined until we get that plan. It's going on a long time, and I think I know we're doing an equipment replacement as part of that. I'll call it the 120, but I think this committee needs to see that in order for us to move forward with that total technology budget. And I don't think that's too much to ask in that case, but I'll open it up to others as far as what their opinions are.
The technology plan is updated on the website. We haven't had a formal presentation here, but we do have a cycle in place which addresses it. Level funding the technology, I know we're a little bit ahead, really is taking multiple steps backwards if that's ultimately the decision that's made.
That's disappointing if it was published to the website and this committee hasn't foreseen that. So, but we can touch that with the technology section that we're slated for next week, or the next meeting, sorry.
No, I don't want to. I'll wait for the next meeting for technology.
Okay. Any other questions related to the FY21 budget?
One last question. I'm going to take a page out of Dr. Stocky's book here. Rick, can you give me a little foreshadowing of the revolving, what your intention is with the revolving account and the supplemental money at this point? Do you have any thoughts to that?
Yes.
Okay. Can you share those?
To the board now? Yeah, so
if you don't want to share them now, I'm fine with that.
Come on, he already knows my answer, so he's foreshadowing when he knows that. So the two pieces that I think, based on some of the parameters the committee has set tonight, which is kind of a level service maintenance budget, or at least take a look at those parameters as it relates to textbooks and supplies. I kind of heard that generalization. In addition, you've talked about net zero on staffing. Two things that you'll see reflected when I sit down with the director of finance and my leadership team next week will be, I will try to maintain school choice at the current number. And certainly the committee can make a determination there, and it would be my expectation that the entire amount of supplemental would be carried over into the fund that was established, which would then be an offset for the assessment. That was a long-winded way of saying it, but I wanted to capture all of those things. All of those things will, quite candidly, be part of what I'll present on March 11th to get to what I believe would be what this board is hoping to see, a number that, then we can have some engaged conversations with the towns. That answer, so it would carry over that dollar amount. If you recall, the director of finance, much like I hear at home very often, was absolutely correct. If you recall, I kept saying that we were going to get more money. The gap was 136 in regional transportation. I was hopefully cautiously optimistic it would be closer to 100. She mentioned over multiple public meetings that she did not believe that was going to be the case, and although we haven't got the final number, Mars is pretty accurate in relation to that. So, Derek, to answer your question, it would be my attempt to have that be part of the assessment in FY21, so the entire amount. Ultimately, obviously, that's the determination that the school board makes.
But from the school board's perspective, the 57, along with the E&D money that Steve talks about, is close to, what, $90,000 right now? That would be potentially in that revenue section of the budget. There's 30 35,000 in school choice that we just mentioned, and another 57, right, of revenue that we'd be looking into that budget for.
As an offset.
As an offset. Am I correct in that?
Correct.
Rough number, the
Correct.
budget, 90,000.
Yeah, again, the concept being for the community, but also the board, the board should be looking at the bottom line number, whether it be through reductions or offsets and assessment. It comes down to the towns are looking at what their assessment is. And I think if we can get there without compromising programs and services, and offsets can be put in place, considering where we're at, I think I think the board needs to strongly consider that. But to answer your question, it will certainly be part of what we'll present for the next meeting.
The struggle that we have, and this is, I think, goes to Derek's point, is that 57,000 may not be there next year as a revenue offset from regional transportation. So if they're only looking at the assessment.
But keep in mind, the school, the board supports regional transportation, and I'm simply adding back the money that we should have received and we
Wholeheartedly
expected
agree.
to receive.
Wholeheartedly agree. The issue being is if they're only looking at, as the Board of Selectmen from Lakeville said, they only look at the bottom line number.
Yeah.
Right?
They're going to look at the assessment.
Right. So it's the challenge of this administration, of this board, is to reiterate to them that, by the way, if we end up going down this road and regional transportation is now a revenue offset, that 57K, whatever that number, may not be there next year. So it's going to impact their assessment a different way, not because we increased our budget.
In FY22.
Correct. That's correct.
Yeah,
So I think that's
that
where
goes to the sustainability question.
Yep.
And we have, but I have to tell you, it's going to pale in comparison to the conversations we have as we roll into the contract negotiations with all the bargaining units, right? We're in the third year of a contract. So I don't disagree, but I think we're going to have some real serious conversations as it relates to what those obligations are to in FY22. It's really why I think it's important to note, though, for the board. I know the board knows this, but for the community, part of the challenge this year was forecasted by the previous director of finance in the first year of the 3-year contract. The first year was going to be easy, but as we started to meet some of those contractual obligations, the second, and I think I can quote Mr. Baker, although he's not here, was going to be a real nightmare, year 3.
Yeah.
You said that, I think, as he patted me on the shoulder and said, see you later. Good luck with that. Let me know how that goes. But it was the reality of kind of where we're at, and it does certainly restrict this board moving forward. But you're absolutely right, Ms. Nolan. That could not be there in the next year.
And we don't have the definitive numbers, but the 57K out of the supplemental, that's just regional transportation. There are other dollars that could be coming as well, correct?
There should be additional monies for circuit breaker, but those numbers have not been released yet.
Okay. Any other questions in FY21? All right, seeing none. Subcommittee updates.
We have no update. We have not met formally as a group, although the subcommittee does have information. And because we're in a multi-year phase, there's less a sense of urgency, and certainly some plans are being unveiled and budgets come out. So there's no new update at this time.
I know everyone is on the way out, but thank you very much to the principals for bearing with us for that. Regional Finance Subcommittee, the next one is March 19th. Is that policy subcommittee?
We met tonight. We went through some of the nurses' health, some of their health issue, health school policies. But the committee has directed me to see if we can work with Paula Money and set up an appointment with her and see if we can get some questions answered.
Paula Mueller.
Paula Mueller, sorry. Wrong Paula.
Mrs. Barron, if I may add, I know it's getting late, but just there was also a discussion about making sure we try to communicate, obviously kind of breaking ongoing issue in relation to the coronavirus and making sure information is communicated in a timely fashion that doesn't marginalize the issue, but also doesn't sensationalize the issue, which it appears at least the media is doing in some instances and has community members concerned about what school plans are in place and so forth. It's a little premature. I'm in the process of trying to keep maybe a short document, maybe a one-page kind of summary of some best tips and practices and kind of things that we're currently doing as it relates to that. But we did have a pretty lengthy discussion with that Wellness Council, which is all the health professionals, all the nurses are there, and its administration. So it's going to be a stay tuned. I know some of you may have received some MASC piece. I don't want to, there's not a whole lot of detail at this point when you look at the impact on local community, but I can understand how you may run into some constituents, some parents who ask, what's the plan? Because that's what the media is suggesting schools should have in place. And I think it's a little premature. The Commonwealth, the Commissioner of Education sent out just a general notice, and I think there's going to be a lot more coming in the coming weeks. Next meeting there for that group is April 15th.
And wellness.
Okay, so Mr. Medeiros and I, we've had back-to-back meetings. So we met with wellness today. We also met with policy. So actually, what Rick was just talking about is what we discussed at the wellness meeting with the nurses. And yeah, Rick is going to put out something at some point about the coronavirus and so forth. We also talked a little bit about the trip coming up, the school trip coming up, looking into that.
Potential impact.
The impact of the coronavirus too.
So what Jerry's sharing is the high school principal's already reached out. We have a scheduled student exchange French field trip for April, and obviously there's some concern in relation to potential impact and decisions that might have to be made, and so we're looking at all those factors right now.
We talked about the breakfast program, which is continuing to go strong. There is a grant available that the food service supervisor is looking into. It does have some caveats to it, so she's going to look further into that. The dental program is very successful, and we have secured 2 new substitute teachers. I guess that there's been a real shortage of nurse subs, so they have found 2, and they seemed quite pleased with that. Our next meeting is April 12th, as Rick says. Nope, April 15th, sorry.
Mr. Owen, if I may, I can tell Mrs. Barron was a retired educator because she was very polite in allowing me to talk out of a turn there, like a 5-year-old is probably talking about another subject that he shouldn't. I just noted, as I looked down, I did note she was looking at me as he was talking about the policy manual. Thankfully, there's not a big crowd here left. I'm talking about wellness, and I appreciate your professionalism to kind of let me continue to ramble on about that when it was not really within topic. Thanks.
We're going on 6 hours of meetings right now. I can understand.
And she should know in between the 3 meetings, I actually called her on her home phone to address another issue.
That's right.
I was hoping that her husband wasn't going to answer the phone when I called in between
When
the
my
meetings.
husband, when you called and I got off the phone, Tom said, I thought you were just in a meeting with him. And so I would not say the truth, but I was.
Any other business come before this meeting?
Vice Chair's birthday.
Yes, happy birthday.
I was asked by his son to recognize that, so
You're going to go have a
I
Corona?
wasn't going to let him. I couldn't let that slide. I owed that to Hunter.
Yes, see how that reflects in his grade. Thank you. No executive session for tonight. Next meeting is March 11th, correct?
Correct.
And are we?
We are at Grace.
On March 11th.
March 11th will be in the Grace Library.
Yeah. On the back is updating dates. You guys can all read that. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn at 8:26.
Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.